I was mid-dream when my phone buzzed. The screen glowed bright against the dark, flashing the name I hadn't seen pop up in months. Dad, I didn't answer it first, just stared at it. I knew it wouldn't be a "how are you" call. It never was. It rang out, then rang again. I sighed, rolled over, and picked up. His voice came through like static with forced warmth. "Eli, hey, I was wondering if you could fly out for the holidays. We're all going to be together this year, your sister, the kids. It would mean a lot to me." There was a pause where I was supposed to respond with enthusiasm. I didn't, but something in his voice, some calculated softness, tripped me up. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I booked a flight from Miami to Portland, spent a stupid amount on tickets, a rental car, and even grabbed some toys and clothes for the kids. Not that anyone asked me to. I just wanted to be prepared. Like always. Maybe part of me still believed this time would be different. The snow was already falling when I stepped out of PDX. That heavy kind of wet that soaks your jeans and makes you wish you'd never left the plane. The drive to their place took longer than the flight. As I turned into the neighborhood, I felt it hit nostalgia's cruel twin. The house was the same one we grew up in, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like something I held up while they lived inside. Mortgage? Me. Wi-Fi? Me. Repairs? Grocery delivery? Gas bill? All me. The we was just for show. I parked and climbed the steps, half expecting a smile. A hug, maybe a thanks for coming. Wishful thinking. Dad opened the door, looked at me like I was the mailman, then stepped aside. "You're watching Sienna's kids. We're leaving in an hour. No hello, no how was your flight, just that." Then Sienna appeared with her duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a smirk that said she'd gotten away with something. "Don't let them wipe their snot on you, Uncle Eli," she laughed, pushing two bundled toddlers toward me. "They've got the sniffles." They all laughed, Mom included. From the kitchen like this was some sitcom prank and I was the punchline. But I wasn't laughing. I stood in the doorway, snow melting off my coat, staring at the people who thought I'd flown 3 miles just to babysit. And I said nothing. Not yet. That came a few minutes later, after they'd zipped their coats, checked their resort confirmation, and started bragging about finally getting a break. I cleared my throat. "I'm not staying." Sienna stopped mid-laugh. "What?" "I'm not here to babysit. And you're not going anywhere." They blinked, like I'd glitched. Dad frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" I stepped inside, dropped my bag, and handed him an envelope. "Your resort reservation? Canceled. 3 days ago. Full refund. Back on the credit card. You know, the one in my name that you stopped paying last year." He flipped it open. The printout was clear. So was the transaction history. Sienna lunged for her phone, pulled up the app. Her face went pale. Mom clutched her coat tighter. But the flights," she stammered. "Also canceled," I said calmly. "Points reallocated. In my name. Your little vacation plan? It's over." My sister's voice hit a pitch I hadn't heard since high school. "You can't do that." "I just did." Dad exploded, first shouting, knocking the coat rack over like it personally offended him. Then came the begging. Mom pleading with me, voice quivering like the world was ending. And still, I stood there, cool, collected, done pretending, done paying for their lives, done letting them treat me like the emergency fund in human form. They thought I was here to help, but Seattle wasn't a detour, it was my destination. Because what they didn't know, what I'd kept buried beneath their excuses and fake gratitude, was that I'd been planning this visit for months. Not to play babysitter, but to finally cut them off, to return everything they dumped on me, piece by piece. And the next piece came 5 minutes later. The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. They weren't expecting anyone, but I was. Dad opened the door. A woman in a black parka, clipboard in hand, stepped inside. "Hi, I'm Jamie, Child Protective Services. Here for a home wellness visit." Sienna dropped her phone. "Literally," Mom gasped. Dad tried to block the door like it would undo reality, but I stepped forward, calm as ever. "Come on in, Jamie," I said. "I think you'll want to see the kitchen first." Jamie nodded, stepped inside, and gave the room a glance like she already knew everything. And the best part, we hadn't even started yet. Jamie, the CPS worker, stepped into the living room like she'd done this 100 times, and she probably had. clipboard tight to her chest, badge gleaming just enough to remind everyone she was official. My sister stood frozen by the staircase, her eyes darting from me to Jamie to the kids' half-zipped suitcases. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For once, her voice failed her. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The kitchen spoke for itself. Dishes stacked like a modern art installation. Bottles lined up like they were on display. A strange smell lingered, something sour and stale like a fridge that hadn't seen groceries in weeks. Jamie made a few notes, asked politely to see the kids' bedroom. I pointed down the hall. She didn't rush. She took her time, inspecting details most people never even think about, like the loose railing on the stairs, the broken latch on the baby gate. My sister tried to jump in, switching tones like a DJ flipping stations. "Oh, I was just about to clean up. This was all last minute. We've been under stress." Jamie nodded in that neutral way trained professionals do. She wasn't here for excuses. She was here for patterns. And I had given her months of them, screenshots, time-stamped videos, records of my sister letting her toddlers wander outside in December with no shoes while she sat on the porch vaping. Missed doctor's appointments, one too many wine bottles in a single week. Jamie returned from the hallway and asked to see where the children usually ate. I pointed at the couch, where a crusty cereal bowl sat next to a half-empty juice box. Mom tried to salvage the moment. We usually sit down as a family, but today's just unusual. "Of course," Jamie said, writing something on her clipboard. Then she asked the question that made Sienna flinch. "Do you have written permission for Eli to watch the children in your absence?" Silence. Jamie turned to me. "Would you mind showing me any text messages or emails confirming care arrangements?" I already had it ready. Pulled out my phone. Opened the thread. The last message from Sienna? "Hey, can you bring that organic shampoo again? The one you got in Miami?" Nothing about babysitting. Nothing about consent. Jamie read it, nodded slowly. Then, without a word, she walked over to the thermostat, took a photo of it showing the room was hovering just under 60 degrees. Too cold for toddlers. Then she asked to speak with the kids. That's when my dad stepped in, chest puffed, voice puffier. "This is a misunderstanding. Eli's always helped us. He's just upset right now. He doesn't mean all this." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect, sir, this is not about anyone's feelings. It's about the welfare of the children." He sat down after that. When Jamie walked upstairs, my mom turned to me, whispering like we were in a church. "What are you doing, Eli? Are you really trying to destroy this family?" I looked at her, steady. "No, I'm finally telling the truth. I'm just not covering for you anymore." She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked away. Jamie came back down after a while and handed my sister a list. It wasn't a citation, not yet. It was a compliance checklist. Fix this, I'll replace that, as schedule this appointment. And then came the line that set the tone. "We'll be returning for a follow-up visit." When Jamie left, my sister finally snapped. "You blindsided us. You called CPS on your own family?" I called because I saw kids being neglected. Not abused, but ignored. And I'm not going to keep quiet just because we share DNA. She didn't yell after that. She just stared at the floor like it had betrayed her too. My dad stormed into the kitchen. "You came here to ruin us." "No," I said calmly. "I came here to stop being your safety net." Then I dropped the next domino. I handed them a second envelope. Inside was a letter from the mortgage company. "Just a reminder, your account is now in arrears. The auto pay has been canceled. As of 3 weeks ago. Thought you'd notice," I said, "but you never opened the mail." Their faces fell in unison. Like I'd unplugged their only source of electricity. "I paid your bills for 3 years. I lied to my own landlord to send you money for food. I covered car insurance, daycare, even Netflix. You made me your provider, and the second I stepped in the door, you treated me like the nanny." My mom shook her head slowly. "You don't understand what it's like for us." I met her eyes. "I do. That's the problem. I've been living it for you." Then I grabbed my suitcase from the corner and wheeled it into the hallway. "I'm staying here for 2 days. That's it. I've got a new place downtown. I move in Monday." My dad looked at me like I'd just committed a crime. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said, turning back. "I think I finally believe I'm not worse. Nobody said a word. I slept in my childhood bedroom that night. The sheets smelled like old laundry and regret. I didn't unpack, didn't need to. The next morning, the house was too quiet. No cartoons blaring, no toddlers crying. Just the low hum of the furnace kicking on and off like it couldn't decide if the house was worth warming. I made coffee, sat at the old kitchen table, and waited for someone to say something. No one did. By noon, I stood up and announced it like I was giving a weather report. I'll be staying here tonight too. Furniture gets delivered to my place tomorrow. Dad didn't look up from his cereal. You think you're entitled to squat here now? I tilted my head. You mean the house I've been paying for? That shut him up. He got up, shoved his bowl into the sink like a 5-year-old trying to start a fight, then walked out. My mom stayed seated, hands clasped like she was in a courtroom, but she didn't speak. Didn't defend me. Didn't defend him either. And my sister? She spent the whole morning holed up in her room with the kids. Doors closed, no footsteps, no apologies. Good. I wasn't interested in performance guilt. I packed that night, alone in my old bedroom. Clothes I'd brought, a few leftover books in the closet, an old baseball glove I hadn't touched in years. The past was like dust. You can wipe it away, but it always comes back in corners you forgot. I slept one last time on that lumpy mattress and woke up earlier than I meant to. It was moving day. The condo was just 15 minutes away, but it felt like another planet. Quiet street, clean sidewalk, elevator with working lights. The kind of building that didn't buzz like a beehive full of other people's crises. The doorman greeted me like I was someone who belonged. That was new. The unit was still mostly empty, couch wrapped in plastic, mattress on the floor, but it was mine. No backup plan, no shared keys, just me and a set of locks that only I had the code for. I dropped my bag on the floor, took a deep breath, and let it out slow. This was peace, not dramatic, not euphoric, just still, no voices, no kids screaming, no one expecting a favor or a wire transfer or an apology. That afternoon, I started unpacking. I hung 3 shirts in the closet and realized I didn't even care if they wrinkled. I filled the fridge with Basics milk, eggs, cold brew, a box of frozen pizza. Nothing fancy. No one to impress. Just enough. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel watched. I didn't hear my phone buzz until 3 p.m. It was Sienna. Can I come over? Alone, please. Not to fight. I stared at it, let it sit. Then I replied with the address and a simple 5 minutes. That's it. 40 minutes later, I saw her from my window. Hoodie, no makeup, arms crossed like she couldn't decide whether to knock or turn around. Eventually, she knocked. I let her in. She paused in the doorway like she wasn't sure if this place was real. This is nice, she said, eyes scanning the space. You really did it. I poured coffee. Black. No cream, no sugar. We sat across from each other at the kitchen counter. No small talk, no fake warmth. She started with the words I never thought I'd hear. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked a little. Not for drama, just exposed. For dumping the kids. For laughing. For thinking it was okay to use you just because you always said yes. She stared into the coffee like she was waiting for judgment. I said nothing. I just listened. She kept going. For the money. For every time I made you feel like it wasn't enough. For turning you into the responsible one and acting like that was your identity, not your choice. I nodded. Just once. Then I finally spoke, thank you. That means something. But saying it isn't the same as changing. She didn't argue. I know, she whispered. That's why I'm not going back there. The house. I got a hotel for me and the kids. Just for now. I need time to figure out the next step. That surprised me. Not the hotel part. The fact that she'd decided to leave. I looked her in the eyes. You should have done that years ago. She nodded, then stood. I won't take more of your time. I just needed to say it. Even if you never talk to me again. Before she walked out, she paused at the door. The kids, they miss you. I miss who I was when I saw them, I said. But I can't be that person if I'm drowning. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just whispered a quiet, take care, and left. I stood at the window and watched her disappear into the sidewalk crowd. No part of me felt triumphant, but a small part of me felt released. That night, I sat in the living room, ate half a pizza, and watched snow fall past the streetlight like confetti for no one. Then, around 7:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened back, the message was short, sharp, and poison-wrapped. It was my dad. "You think this is over? You think embarrassing your family makes you clean? You're going to learn what payback feels like, Eli." Click. I played it twice. Not for shock. Just to remind myself who I was dealing with. This wasn't over, they weren't done, and neither was I. I didn't sleep much that night. My dad's voicemail played on a loop in my head, not the words, but the tone. That slow burn rage he always used when he knew control was slipping. The kind that didn't explode. It eroded. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a folder I'd labeled months ago, Reclaim. Inside were the receipts. Screenshots of every payment I'd made for them. Mortgage auto drafts, utility bills, car insurance, even the co-pay from my niece's dental visit that I paid out of pocket because the system was down. I had timestamps, bank logs, all of it. Not to attack, to protect. Because people like my father only understand two things, control and consequence. And I was done with both. The next morning, I drove to the bank, signed a form removing my name from the mortgage. Official now. The house was theirs. The debt? Also theirs. The banker glanced at the folder I slid across the desk. "You sure you want to do this?" I nodded. I'm not their safety net anymore. It felt quiet in my chest. Not relief, not victory, just stillness. On the drive home, I called the car lender and reported missed payments on the vehicle I co-signed for my sister. She was 2 months behind. They scheduled repossession for the end of the week. I canceled the upcoming transfers I had on auto-pay groceries, Wi-Fi, and the family Netflix account. It all took 5 minutes. Then I went home, brewed coffee, and watched the snow fall from my window like the sky was cleaning itself. At noon, my mom texted. A long message, rambling, saying I'd gone too far. That family shouldn't be transactional. That love means helping even when it hurts. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, a group text came in. From her. "Dad, Sienna, same tired song. They sacrificed everything for me. Now I was turning my back on the people who raised me. They claimed it was a misunderstanding and that I was punishing them for hurting my feelings. No one mentioned the years of financial abuse. No one acknowledged the manipulation. They wanted to flip the script, but I'd already torn the pages out. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have guessed, was that I'd taken one last step 3 months ago. A quiet step. I'd filed a report with the State Housing Board. Not a complaint. A request for a compliance audit. I had told them everything. How I was the sole provider for a household claiming disability benefits and childcare subsidies, while the actual caretakers were spending weekends at spas, and the kids were eating peanut butter off stained couch cushions. I submitted supporting documents, bank records, screen captures, proof of dependent neglect. I even included the recording from a video call where my nephew was alone outside in 40-degree weather. That report triggered a silent investigation. And 2 days ago, they got the first letter. "We regret to inform you that your benefits are under review." The second wave hit that week. Sienna's car? Gone. Towed off the driveway early Wednesday morning. Dad? Calling every old friend he still had, asking for loans. Most didn't answer. The ones who did said no. Thursday night, there was a knock on my door. Soft, hesitant, not angry, not loud. I opened it, half expecting Sienna. It was Mom. She stood there, bundled in a thick coat, red around the eyes, but not from tears. She looked like someone who had lost a game she didn't know she was playing. "I came alone," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't move. "I know you're expecting a speech," she added. "I don't have one." I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't sit, didn't touch anything, just stood by the window, looking out over the city like it could offer a better answer than the one waiting in my silence. "They're spiraling," she finally said. "The audit, the car, the bills. Your father thinks you're out to destroy us." I stared at her. "And what do you think?" She didn't answer right away. "I think you finally did what we all thought you'd never do. You walked away." I waited. Then came the part I didn't expect. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. No name on the front, just handed it to me. Inside was a check. Real. Not much. A fraction of what they owed. She shrugged. It's what we could afford. I didn't say anything. I'm not asking you to forgive us, she said, or come back. I'm not asking for anything. She turned toward the door. I just didn't want you to think it was all lies. Then she left. Just like that. No apology, no tears. Just a take care whispered like a goodbye and a question wrapped into one. I didn't cash the check. I didn't tear it up either. I just slid it into a drawer and left it there. Not because I wanted to hold it over them, but because I wasn't ready to believe it meant anything yet. A gesture, maybe. A truce? Not quite, but it wasn't nothing. The silence that followed was loud in a new way. No group texts. No guilt-laced voicemails. Not even a sarcastic meme from Sienna, which had once been her passive-aggressive specialty. Just quiet. At first, I didn't trust it. I kept waiting for the backlash, for some last-ditch manipulation. But it never came, not in the way I expected. Instead, a week later, I got an email from Sienna. Short. 1 photo, 2 lines. The kids standing outside a small, aging apartment building, holding keys, smiling. We got our own place. I know it's small, but it's ours. Thank you, even if you still hate me. I stared at it for a long time, not because I hated her, but because I didn't, not anymore. I wasn't angry the way I used to be, tight in the chest, burning in the gut. That kind of anger comes from being trapped. I wasn't trapped anymore. So I sent 1 line back. No hate, just boundaries. And I meant it. No promises, no reunion. Just space. The next few weeks were uneventful in the best way. I went to work, came home, watched the snow melt off the sidewalks one afternoon like winter had finally given up. I got my shelves up, framed some art, found a new grocery store I liked. My fridge was full for the first time in forever. I stopped looking at my phone like it was a grenade. Then, a letter came in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in pen I knew immediately was my mom's. Inside, another check, smaller than the first, a few $100s. And a note, we're doing what we can. Every month if possible. No expectations. Just effort. I sat on the couch and read it twice. It still didn't fix anything. But something about the line, no expectations, hit harder than I thought it would. I didn't reply. Not yet. I didn't want them to think money bought forgiveness. It didn't. But I also didn't want to pretend it wasn't progress. Small, quiet progress unlike them. I pinned the check to the fridge. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. People can change sometimes, but they have to do it without dragging someone else with them. Sienna checked in again 2 weeks later. Another email, another photo. The kids sitting on the floor of their apartment, drawing in coloring books. The living room looked normal, lived in, cozy even. The kind of mess that comes from play, not neglect. Got a part-time job at a daycare, she wrote. I know, irony, right? But I'm learning. And they're laughing more. I didn't reply. Not out of coldness, I just wanted to sit with it a while. Because for the first time in a long time, there wasn't a string attached. And I was learning that silence could be respectful too. One afternoon, I walked past the old house, just to see it. The lights were off, the curtains drawn, a foreclosure notice stuck to the mailbox with damp tape. I didn't feel triumphant or guilty, just confirmed. They hadn't made the payments. They hadn't picked up the pieces. And now the bank would take what I no longer carried. I took a photo, deleted it. Some things didn't need a memory. Back home, I found myself thinking less about them. Not in anger, just less. I stopped counting how many favors I used to give. I stopped checking my banking app like it was a surveillance tool. I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I had taken the shoes, walked away, and locked the door behind me. Then came the strangest moment yet. One night, about a month after my mom visited, I sat at the window sipping tea. No TV on, just the city humming softly below. And I laughed. Not at anything, not at a joke, not at a meme, just laughter. Out of nowhere. The kind that comes from not expecting crisis anymore. It was late. Snow again, light this time. Floating like ash across the skyline. I realized then this was peace. Not a clean slate, but a clean distance. That night, I opened the drawer and pulled out the first check my mom gave me. I held it, turned it over, Still didn't cash it. Still didn't throw it away. It wasn't money to me. It was proof of the one thing I had stopped believing in long ago, that sometimes, when you draw a line, people can learn not to cross it. And if they don't, at least you're not standing there holding the rope. Spring showed up early that year. The sidewalks thawed. The air lost its bite. Sunlight started lingering a little longer in the evenings, soft and gold like a slow exhale. I hadn't heard from my father since his voicemail, the threat he left like a landmine that never exploded. Maybe he was waiting. Maybe he thought I'd crawl back eventually. Or maybe silence was his new punishment. I didn't chase it. The last time I saw his name on my phone, I let it ring. No voicemail. No follow-up. And honestly, that felt like the clearest answer he'd ever given me. People like him don't apologize. They don't reckon. They wait for the world to forgive them by forgetting. I wasn't interested in that kind of forgetting, but I also wasn't interested in revenge anymore. That's the thing about cutting ties at first. It feels like self-defense. Then it starts to feel like oxygen. I filled my days with new habits. Grocery runs where I only had to think about one fridge. Gym visits with no guilt for taking care of myself. Quiet mornings where I could brew coffee and read without a kid crying through the wall or a call asking for a quick favor that was never really quick. Peace didn't come in a flood. It came drip by drip, like a faucet finally tightening after years of leaking. Then one Tuesday morning, I got an email from Sienna. Not emotional, not desperate, just measured. Subject line: just so you know. The message was simple. We're okay. I started full-time at the daycare. I'm off food assistance now. Rent's tight, but it's mine. Mom sends a check once a month. I never ask how she gets it, but she says it's honest. Dad's quiet. He watches TV a lot. Doesn't leave the house. I don't visit unless the kids ask. They ask less now. I told them not to involve you anymore, that they lost the right to expect anything. I know I should have said all this sooner. Just thank you for walking away when I wouldn't. It made me realize I could. No attachments, no photos, just words. It felt final, in the best way. I didn't reply right away. I gave it space, let the silence breathe a little, the way you do when a room has just been cleaned and you don't want to mess it up too soon. But later that night, I sat at my desk, opened a new email, and typed, "I'm glad you found a way forward. Keep walking. No more, no less." Because this wasn't a movie. There wouldn't be a dramatic family reunion with hugs and forgiveness and a meal around the table. This was real life. And in real life, sometimes the best you get is distance without destruction. The next morning, I walked to a local bookstore and picked up a hardcover journal, not for writing confessions, just for making space. Inside the front cover, I wrote, "Day 1, nobody needed me today." That's a good thing. I left the second page blank on purpose, not for the next trauma, for the next nothing. That weekend, I visited the art museum for the first time in years. No one asked where I was. No one called in the middle of it. I stood in front of a massive canvas, just swirls of red and navy blue, and I didn't rush. Didn't check my phone. Didn't feel like I owed anyone my time. There's a word for that feeling. It's not freedom, exactly. It's not escape. It's something softer, ownership. Of your time, your mind, your space. Later that night, I stood on my balcony watching the city wind down. Someone was laughing 2 floors down. Music drifted up from a car idling at the curb. I leaned on the railing, warm mug in hand, and realized something I hadn't let myself say out loud yet. I didn't regret any of it. Not the plane ticket, not the confrontation, not even the silence that followed. Because the moment I stopped being their solution, I started being my own. I still hadn't seen my dad. I didn't expect to. I didn't need to. My mom continued sending checks, like clockwork. No letters now. Just the envelope, the amount, and the same return address I'd memorized as a kid. I cashed the third one, not for the money, for the acknowledgement. I didn't see it as repayment. I saw it as a quiet admission of guilt, or maybe gratitude. I didn't need to label it. I just needed it to not be empty. By mid-April, my place felt like a home. Couch broken in, books on shelves, closet full of only what I chose to wear. No hand-me-down responsibility, no quick favor texts. Just a calendar with my own handwriting on it. One day, I pulled out the last sheet of documents from the reclaim folder. The very first bank statement I had printed when I started digging myself out. I folded it once, neatly, and tucked it into the back of the journal, not as a wound, as a mile marker, a reminder that survival isn't the same as living, and I'd finally stepped into the difference. Some people chase closure like it's a destination, but me? I didn't need their apology anymore. I had myself, and I was finally enough. Story 2, my parents said they were unable to pay for a family trip with me. A week after that, my mom shared pictures of our family and our beloved daughter with her new lover on Facebook. The family is gathered together. I didn't respond to it. They experienced an emergency a week later. They came to plead for assistance. I interrupted them, followed by my father. My name is Jack. I rent a one-bedroom apartment just outside of Denver, and I'm 26 years old. It's where I work, assistance for a firm that develops health software, primarily from a distance. Although it's not glamorous, it provides for my family, with whom I believed I had finally reconciled, and pays the bills. I was simply disregarding the obvious, it turns out. It all began in mid-March, less than a month ago. I was having supper at my folks' place, something I do every 2 weeks more out of habit than anything else. Emma, my sister, was present. She is still living at home at the age of 25, in a subtle way spoiled. Unless you've spent 20 years living next door to her, she only receives what is important, not everything she desires. My mother began discussing this trip as we were seated at the table. In Aspen, they had plans to build a cabin resort, a location where elegance meets real rustic. Everything, even the brochure, was printed out by her. They planned to hike, disconnect, and perhaps go horseback riding. The process. I asked politely whether I might go. It had been years since I had taken a vacation. I reasoned that we may all benefit from spending some time together. Only once. Mom looked at me as if she were sorry for me. Then she began to explain that this year was difficult. It can only accommodate 4 people. She didn't want me to feel under pressure to pay for myself, since she knew that rent was high and everything, and money was a little tight after taxes, so I didn't push. I simply said, okay, sure, don't worry. That night I left her flat, not even furious, kind of numb. I kept wondering if I had misinterpreted. Perhaps the money was the main factor. Perhaps they genuinely believed they were a little inconvenience. I'm working late at my apartment at 9:30 a week later. I browsed Facebook during my break. My mom had uploaded a picture. She was standing on a Colorado cliff with my dad, Emma, and Emma's boyfriend, Zach, with their arms wrapped around one another with a trademark smile. The caption said, "Our family and our dear daughter with her new boyfriend." The whole family. I'm not sure what struck me more forcefully. The fact that they brought bag and referred to it as our family, or the fact that they left me behind. Emma had been seeing Zach for 2 months. He was quiet, new, and the type of person who genuinely meant it when he said things like "nice to meet you." I enjoyed him. I still do, in a way. It exacerbates the situation since I probably would have agreed if they had asked whether it was acceptable for them to bring him. They didn't ask, though. They simply take my position. I remained silent. Not to Zach, and not to them, not to the post. A week after their return, I just sat with it and let it to consume me. It was a Monday evening. I was watching something on Netflix after finishing dinner when someone knocked on my door. I had no expectations. All 3 of them were there when I opened it. Emma, Dad, and Mom are standing in the corridor. They appeared to be in ruins. Eyes droopy as if they hadn't slept for days, hair disheveled. I didn't even greet them. I simply waited. Mom began writing about how quickly things had become worse. The engine had been taken out of their stolen SUV and left in a parking lot. Dad had borrowed funds from his own retirement to invest. Later, in a commercial transaction with an old buddy, I discovered that it was a fraud. Emma also attempted to assist by charging certain bills to her credit card. She was now in a panic and very exhausted. They required assistance, only for a short time. A place to fall, a little loan perhaps, only until everything were stable. No, I told them. Not flat, no. Not because there wasn't room for me. They'd already showed me exactly where I stood, not because I couldn't help. As though I had just tossed them out into the snow, they gazed at me. Without saying another thing, they departed. It was many days before I heard from them. After then, things began to go in a way I hadn't anticipated. There was stillness for 2 days after I tossed them out. No emails, messages, or phone calls. At first it felt weird. The queen of check-ins, my mom, abruptly stopped sending group texts, filled with remorse. Emma wasn't using social media at all. That in itself seemed strange. She had stopped sharing her typical tales of brunches, puppy photos, and hazy sunsets. For a moment, I'll admit, I wondered whether they were simply ashamed. This may serve as a wake-up call. Perhaps we would all calm down and speak like grown-ups. However, I didn't account for them. Zach texted me on Friday morning once more. It wasn't long. "Can we talk?" he said. "Sure," I replied. That night, he stopped by. He seemed worn out, as if he were wearing a burden he wasn't accustomed to. I gave him a drink, but he sat down without even touching it. Then he struck it at me. He said that he was unaware that I had not received an invitation to the trip. He thought I couldn't make it or was just too busy at work. After reading the Facebook post, he said that seeing my face made him feel ill. At first, he was not interested in going on the vacation. Emma, however, persisted. Then he expressed his want to leave, not only out of the relationship, but out of the discourse. He had spent a week living with them. After I declined, he was pulled into their chaos. They forced him to buy food using his money, told him it was just a temporary situation. The previous evening, my mother confronted him and inquired about his long-term plans with Emma. Then she recommended marriage children. She even produced an album of pictures from Emma's early years, as if that would make things more agreeable. He told me he hadn't even been with her long enough to meet her extended family, much less make plans for children, and he was appalled. He claimed to have felt as though he had joined a cult. So that morning, he packed everything and departed after breaking up with Emma. Things began to alter at that point. I received a call from an unidentified number on Sunday morning. When I listened it back, I let it go to voicemail. It was my father. He had not spoken to me directly since they had arrived at my door. They called the message, "Don't apologize. No justification. You've made your decision, Jess. We will proceed without you." At first, I didn't give it much thought. Until Monday, I took my keys and went out to my car to drive to the grocery. The words appeared to be paint or oil, and I paused as I saw the windshield splattered over the glass. Family stays with family. No witnesses, no note. I submitted the report. The police claimed to have inspected the local cameras, but I was already certain that nobody would be apprehended. My bank account was flagged for suspicious activities that same day. It has been attempted to be accessed from my dad's town. Most likely a coincidence. Perhaps I didn't call them, I thought. No one was confronted by me. Rather, I began to plot. I could give them a battle if they wanted one, but according to my terms, they wouldn't anticipate it either. I stopped acting as like this will go away after the windshield. I stopped calling the cops. No one was confronted by me. Rather, I became quiet. I dug. I was aware that my father had boundaries and didn't want others to breach them. On paper, he owed money to certain things he would prefer not to have. Finding one of them didn't take long. In 2022, he had co-signed a loan using my social security number. Only last year, when I performed a random soft credit draw, did I learn about it. When I addressed him at the time, he pretended to be unintelligent until I threatened to get an attorney. He pleaded with me to overlook it, said that he would settle it and pay it off. I did nothing, but I never saw any evidence. I saw an opportunity now. I was honest with the lending business over the phone. I never signed anything, I said. I gave them a letter from a legal acquaintance who owed me a favor along with an affidavit. The account is now being looked into. He is now more balanced. He has been prohibited from doing anything pertaining to credit until this is addressed, and his interest has been frozen. My mother emailed me a picture of a letter she had gotten from the bank 3 days later. She then called, but I didn't pick up. Her voicemail was left. She asked me why I was doing this while weeping. "We were family," she said. "Family also extends forgiveness." I didn't respond. Emma shared a story of a black screen with white lettering on Instagram that evening. When someone you trust betrays you, it always sounds the loudest. I laughed because it was desperate, not because it was amusing. I went to see someone I hadn't spoken to in more than a year the next day. My granddad. The father of my father. About 40 minutes away is the small village where he resides. He was always someone I liked. He didn't resemble my father at all. Sharp and quiet. Always spoke things in a dry manner that unnerved others. He was the type of man who rarely spoke. When he did, however, everyone paid attention. He answered the door, looked at me for a long moment, and said when I arrived at his place, "You took too long." On the porch, we sat. I told him everything. Not only the years' worth of abuse they had inflicted on me, the fact that it was always them, how I was only helpful after everything came apart, Emma. He remained silent. He simply listened while sitting there. He leaned back and gave me a dry little laugh as I told him about the windshield, the loan, and how they came to me with phony excuses after lying to my face. Then he said something that will always stick in my memory. People with 45 large mouths like your father didn't last long, you know? No dignity. Someone who would be willing to sell you out in order to keep his job. I wasn't even sure how to react. Let them come crawling, he continued. However, make sure they remember the mud on their knees. He promised to lend a hand however he could. He claimed that some of his pals were still able to push buttons if necessary. I didn't say no, but I did tell him not yet. My mother sent me another mail the next morning. It was different this time. They wanted to get together simply to chat, she said. Make the air clear. It would only be the three of them, she added. Dad, her, and me. They were unaware of that. That day, I already had something else planned. They were also undoubtedly unaware that I had extended an invitation to someone else to join us. We decided to get together in this peaceful cafe on the outskirts of town, land that is neutral, not in front of people, but also not in a position where they might corner me. I went with the rear booth. When they entered, I was already sitting. Emma, Dad, and Mom. This time, no Zach. He was no longer involved. Only the original three. As though it were a family meal, they sat down. Mom made an effort to smile. Before he spoke, Dad appeared agitated. Emma, presumably for effect, donned sunglasses inside. They placed no orders. They jumped straight in. Mom began discussing forgiveness, family, miscommunications, and poor timing. Dad didn't say anything, which was unusual for him. He enjoys playing the victim most of the time. He appeared to be something to lose today. This was novel. They promised to forget everything, just if I don't escalate. They said that without my supplying gasoline, things were already difficult. I informed them that I had nothing else to offer. I simply had had enough of acting. I told them something else after that. I'd been holding back on dropping it. Do you recall the small business loan you filed for using that veterans grant, I asked? The one where you declared your job as active military and increased your income? His face became cold. I bent over. I forwarded a copy of your DD 214 along with the actual numbers. Mom opened her lips to speak, but nothing came out. I told the truth. I had received the documents from my grandfather. He claimed to have saved it in case my dad ever attempted to use the VA in an idiotic manner. Once more, he had. And now fraud was being looked at. I stood up, prepared to depart. My granddad entered at that point. No one asked him to sit down. He simply stood with his arms folded at the end of the table. My dad appeared to have seen a ghost. Grandpa was silent for a moment. He simply gazed at his son, the way you see a disappointing thing that you are unable to return. Then he spoke loudly enough to be heard in the other cabins. You always believed that you were more intelligent than other people. You never realized that intelligence does not equate to honesty. I'm pleased you didn't end up like him, he said, turning to face me with a little smile. Then he went away. Then I went out. The repercussions started almost immediately. Dad's loan application was formally placed on hold, while an inquiry was conducted 3 days later. A contract was backed out by his business partner. Perhaps someone who knew someone was whispering to you. In a lengthy, meandering Facebook status, my mother advocated for families to forgive one another rather than destroy one another. Emma shared a quotation about how individuals reveal their true selves during difficult times, along with a picture of herself in tears. I remained silent. 24 calls came in, but I didn't answer. I took another step instead. A family trust existed. It was established up long ago by my grandfather. Something stable but not too big. Something he could one day teach his grandkids. My father had been subtly urging him to transfer everything to Emma. Family wealth doesn't interest me, I answered. That week, I sat down with my grandfather once again. I didn't even need to mention anything. He informed me that he had previously updated the documentation. Emma had left. My father's name had vanished entirely. When he told me, he laughed. Until someone read the script, your dad was always terrific at being the hero. My parents' next message to me wasn't a voicemail. It was a court order. They were apparently thinking of suing me. I made the decision to quit playing defense at that point. It was not a serious legal notice. Not at all. They most likely discovered the cease and desist letter online, authored by a local attorney. However, it's clear enough that my parents were prepared to go outside the bounds, because they believed they could intimidate me into giving in. They were unaware that I had been subtly getting ready for this all along, methodically, burning their falsehoods to the ground and ensuring they never had the strength to escape again were my two objectives. The initial action was made public. I made a folder with data, papers, screenshots, and texts. The times they took advantage of me, misled me, and stole evidence of the loan in my name, the texts Emma used to coerce me into paying off her debt, the VA fraud documents Grandpa had preserved, the pictures of the broken windshield, the note my dad left when I refused, everything. After that, I published it. The post is headlined, "This is what family looks like when you're only useful in a crisis," but it's hardly a big reveal. We all belong to close-knit, primarily suburban, local groups that like gossiping. I wrote on a community forum. It had become the sort of location where my dad always attempted to seem like the well-respected family guy in a matter of hours. Comments were made. Others related their personal tales. Some were not shocked by the mourning and knew my dad's identity. There had been 2 incidents. My mother first deactivated her Facebook account. All posts have been removed. Second, my dad was no longer able to volunteer for the local business council. My post had been forwarded by someone. I wasn't finished. I got in touch with Emma's credit card debt collecting firm. I informed them about her current workplace. The same week they claimed to be barely living, they split up expensive bags, concert tickets, and a spa trip, so I emailed them a list of the things she had bought using Zach's card, which he provided me. He was more than willing to assist. By the end of the week, they had frozen her account. In one night, she phoned me 6 times. I didn't answer. The actual blow, however, was later. My father was attempting to launch a new company. It has to do with property management. I located the LLC application online, but it wasn't yet live. I phoned a buddy of mine who practices real estate law since my mom was listed as the second manager. The business had not finished obtaining the necessary zoning permits. And you know what? The city stopped the application and started a formal inquiry after finding inconsistencies in the documentation, incorrect addresses, and enough misreported income to cause a delay in review within 3 days. They knew it was me, even if I didn't tell them. They emailed me this time. No legalese, no threats. Only 2 words. Jack, why? I didn't respond. Rather, I took the stop and desist letter they sent me, printed it out, and sent it to my grandfather. He downed 2 glasses of bourbon after reading it. 1 each for me and him, he remarked, lifting his drink. Your father was always skilled at using his tongue to write checks. Unfortunately, he never figured out how to cash them. They've done enough damage for now, he said, but we'll give them a proper burial if they return. I gave a nod. After we had a drink, I started working on the final phase. Due to the fact that their home isn't truly theirs, Grandpa owned it, and they will soon see what it's like to quickly pack things. The entire situation began to unravel more quickly than I could have predicted 2 weeks after the city froze my dad's company account. It turns out that all it takes is one strong shove to build your life on borrowed funds, falsified documents, and phony charm. I was the push. His tax returns were highlighted by the city. After that, an audit was initiated. Additionally, the local paper received an anonymous report from someone Grandpa knew, most likely that old accountant. A brief story concerning misappropriated monies and dubious veteran business claims was published. Everyone who read it in our community knew precisely who it was, even if it didn't name him. His investors left one by one, not because they were ethically concerned, but simply because they were afraid of getting burnt. Then the actual blow struck. On the home where he and my mother resided, my dad had obtained a second mortgage. Legally, just the home wasn't his. When he attempted to use fake paperwork to substantiate the loan, he conveniently forgot that it was still in Grandpa's name. Grandpa answered the phone when the bank phoned, and rather than stepping in to cover him, he gave the actual deed. Grandpa made his last move at that point. He formally altered the trust. According to the law, the home and the land it was on were placed in a single-name family trust. Mine. Not my mother's, not Emma's, not even a provision for my dad. They had 30 days to depart. They did not resist. Not in public, but an odd occurrence occurred the week before the relocation. A woman I didn't know sent me a message. She claimed to have worked as my dad's assistant during his semi-successful years as the owner of a chain of auto dealerships. She claimed to have witnessed everything and believed I ought to be aware of it. My parents had another child, it turns out. A half-brother from an affair he had when my mother was expecting Emma, but that was years ago. I had no idea what to do with that knowledge. I haven't yet. However, it made more sense in some way. He treated Emma like a king or queen, and he treated me as if I didn't exist at all, as if I were reminding him that his running speed was insufficient. I kept it from Emma. No, I doubt I ever will. My parents were silent on the final day before the eviction. They were boxes for packaging. Emma made cryptic comments about being severed by your own blood while crying. My mother appeared to have aged 10 years in a single week. My father, he simply had a worn-out appearance. Before they went, he placed a message in Grandpa's mailbox. I didn't see it. Without reading it, Grandpa burnt it in the fire pit. I don't care, he answered when I asked him what it stated. For the past 30 years, I have been reading his justifications. On the outskirts of town, they reside in a rental home. Someone told me that my dad is attempting to secure consultancy business for an unsophisticated buddy. Emma has returned to her retail job. Mom hasn't spoken much. Too silent. I go to my grandfather once a week. We have coffee while sitting on the porch. We converse occasionally. There are moments when we simply listen to the quiet. He once pulled out an ancient hunting knife and handed it to me. It seemed like a sincere gesture to me. Rather, he claimed that this belonged to my father. When the barn caught fire in '42, he used it to cut ropes. There are moments when you have to cut things loose before they drag you down. Then he grinned, the smile of that crooked old man. Jack, you did well. You didn't just wake up, you completed it. He was correct. My dad still sends me an email once a month. A fresh address every time. The same tone every time. Bitterness was covered by regret. I never respond. Retaliation is no longer necessary for me. I've already made one update. The eviction had occurred many months prior. In fact, I had begun to feel at ease in my life. Someone I was seeing was striving for a promotion and was even thinking about acquiring a puppy. My dad had been sending me sloppy emails every month, so it was surprising that I hadn't heard from them in weeks. Then one suddenly appeared, but it wasn't him. It wasn't one of those dubious C sentences, and it came from a lawyer. This was an out-of-state real estate attorney. Emails with the subject line, "Urgent regarding purchase of property" by Mr. Ronald K., my dad's full name, were sent. I thought it could be rubbish when I opened it. No, it wasn't. My dad apparently purchased a little plot of land outside of town, not in his name. He had utilized the show LLC with a different management, with whom he had collaborated for decades. The device was remote, only dirt and trees, no permissions, no utilities. Here's the worst part though. Plans for a self-sufficient hut had been presented by him. Live off the grid, concealed in documents. There is no published address. At first, the lawyer didn't recognize me. Using my grandfather's deed of trust as a guide, he claimed to have been recruited to manage the permissions and had accidentally discovered my identity. Something to do with overlapping zoning and land conflicts. The properties were in close proximity to one another. My dad aspired to live out there by himself, totally alone, and disconnected from the outside world. I was at a loss for what to think. He wasn't like that. He flourished while people looked on. Cheers. Command. However, this appeared to be a man's way out when he realized he had run out of options. At first, I didn't tell Grandpa. I reasoned that it could be best if he was unaware. Grandpa, however, summoned me over last week. That expression returned, as if he was already hearing it in his mind. He said, "I got a call. According to an old buddy, your dad has been surreptitiously redrawing maps and spying about the city assessor's office, inquiring about construction licenses and altering borders." I informed him of my discovery and nodded. For a long time, he simply nodded back without saying anything. "You know why he's doing it, right?" he asked. I gave a shrug. He has no intention of vanishing. He's attempting to hold off on us. It made logic, but I hadn't even considered it. Not that my dad was running. When the smoke cleared, he returned after hiding and keeping low while he waited for everyone to calm down. Acting as though you're modest. Grandpa gave me a little envelope that he had taken out. It included a deed to the land adjacent to the one my father had recently purchased, not to our property. A week prior, Grandpa had purchased it from someone else. He smiled as he glanced at me. He must gaze at my house every morning if he want to vanish into the woods. I knew this wasn't over, so I didn't even inquire how he did it. My father had no intention of going missing. He was preparing a return. It would also not be public this time. It would be quiet, slow, and cunning, similar to him. However, he was unaware that we were now observing. Story 3. My dad videotaped me as I was repairing his car and shared it on the family chat. "Take a look at this loser. He fixes automobiles for nothing." Then, throughout the conversation, cousins were giggling. Dad then wrote and shared it on Facebook. "Examine this failure." I became irate and walked away. Dad and other family members bombarded my phone with calls 3 days later, pleading with me to take back what I had done. However, it began with a fucking alternator. My dad couldn't afford to take his old Ford to a mechanic because it wouldn't start. As usual, when anything broke, he contacted me. I wouldn't charge him, not because he valued my time or abilities. He simply anticipated it. I dropped everything and drove over, even though I had work that morning. I hoped that things would be different this time. Perhaps he would give me something little in exchange. I'm grateful, a little meal. Instead, something. He gave me a Gatorade that was lukewarm, said something about how short it should be, and returned inside to watch television. I spent over 2 hours under the hood in the driveway. The sun was cruel. Grease was all over my arms. Bending over the engine was hurting me in the back. Every bolt that I touched felt like it had been fused, and my shirt was clinging to my flesh. I wasn't whining, though. I was accustomed to it. I caught a glimpse of him standing on the porch at one point. He was recording me with his phone. Perhaps it was one of those strange dad things, I thought. As if he was proud yet unsure of how to express it. Like a fool, I even gave the camera a little nod. It wasn't until I checked my phone during a water break that I realized what he had done. I received many alerts from the family group chat. This time, it was a video of me squatting over the engine, using the back of my hand to wipe perspiration from my brow, with the comment, "Look at this loser." Normally, it's just dull birthday words and the means. As if it were 1952 fixing automobiles for gratis. Sweat, tears of delight, and a face covered in tears. Sweat on your face, joyful tears. I simply gazed at it. Then the remarks began. Josh, Eric, and Nathan, my cousins, were the first to leap in. "Kyle is an LOL classic. Tell me when he's finished. My toilet has to be scrubbed. Bro, you ought to have attended trade school at the very least. My aunt's ruiner, too. What a lovely child he is. God bless his tiny heart. It somewhat exacerbated it. Not that I was yet furious. Not until my coworker emailed me the screenshot. My dad posted the identical video to Facebook with a fresh caption 5 minutes later. Look at this loser who is still slow for your task. Use the hashtag family discount. Face with happy tears. More than 60 remarks. A few are from folks I haven't spoken to since high school. I'm laughing, tagging other people, sharing individuals with whom I was formerly pals. I used to enjoy girls. Didn't that guy cry once in gym class and it got 19 likes? One person said. I remained silent. The text went unanswered. I just closed the hood, placed my tools back in the trunk, and drove off. No. Farewell. No justification. That night, I stayed with a buddy. I told him that I needed room. There were no inquiries from him. My phone began to blow up on the third day. 30 calls were lost. Voicemails. One of my mother's tears. My dad gave me another one that began quietly, but ended up yelling. Trying to appear pleasant, my cousins texted two people at once. My uncle then sent me a direct message. "What did you do, Kyle? Take care of this right now." They didn't know, so I simply gazed at the screen. They were unaware of my actions. They believed that I was the same child who would remain silent and endure the heat. The one who kept silent at family get-togethers as they made jokes about my interests. Asked if my automobile was still my home. It was a period if I continued to play mechanic. They were unaware that I had spent months organizing my departure. The passive version of me that they were accustomed to kicking around, not the family. None of them understood that auto repair was no longer only a pastime. Behind the scenes, I had been constructing something. I had been making little sums of money by side flipping automobiles. I created my own LLC 2 weeks prior to that. Ford broke down, and I had a shop set up, paperwork done, and my company name locked down. I had struck a deal with a tiny local business that was in need of an experienced worker. The proprietor was prepared for retirement. We completed the transfer. I was going to take over a legitimate business. I didn't just head to my friend's house once I pulled out of the driveway. I phoned the person who sold it and worked late into the night in my soon-to-be garage. Asked if it would be okay to move more quickly. Yes, he replied. He enjoyed my efforts. The paperwork was finished at the end of the family conversation. Even though I was holding the keys, it wasn't the beginning. They were not panicking for that reason. My own post was uploaded 3 days after my dad's. A video similar to his, with a bright red Mustang on the elevator behind me. My new store is neat and orderly. But mine was shot. I gazed directly at the camera. Just facts, no rage. I was dubbed a loser for mending a car in a recent video, which some of you may have seen. My father owned the vehicle. I wasn't paid by him. He wasn't asked to. Here's the problem, though, as he was laughing and photographing me. Out here, I was constructing something. My new store is here. I now own it. I own it. I moved aside to make the space, the tools, the framed license on the wall, and the store name visible to the camera. Auto work for free. I stopped. Indeed, the name is derived from the joke, "Dad, thanks for the promotion." Then I grinned because I knew what was about to happen, not because I was proud. Within a day, the post blew up. People began sharing it, leaving comments, and receiving direct messages from strangers who claimed to be connected, offered assistance, and asked for jobs. I started being tagged by other mechanics. My dad contacted me 7 times in one morning, and the local news even got involved. 4 voicemails were left. He then made a status update. There are those who lack gratitude. To improve their own image, they distort the facts. First, family. Always. 5 people liked it, all of them were family. Then something amusing occurred. The same cousins who had been giggling began contacting me. Josh texted me personally, stating that he believed what I was doing was very horrible and that he didn't mean anything by it. On his own tale, Nathan shared my insightful piece. Eric used fire emojis in his comments as if nothing had occurred. After that, I posted an invitation to fund a family vehicle day at my business from my uncle, who had instructed me to change the tag. All of them were attempting to rejoin the ship. They were unaware that I wasn't finished. At first, I disregarded the messages, allowed them to accumulate. In an attempt to sound encouraging, as if they had always had faith in me, I saw them contort themselves into knots. I was curious to see just how far they would go. Then my father arrived at the shop. I heard someone knocking on the windshield as I was changing the oil on a customer's Civic. He was standing outside like a man who had just learned the ATM, had taken his last 20 when I looked up. I remained still. Until my colleague unlocked the door, I just stared. He entered as though he was the owner, didn't even greet them, began accusing me of being overly theatrical. I had made him seem bad in front of his entire family. That on the internet, I had made him appear foolish. He made no reference to the original video at all. Then he uttered what ultimately made me lose it. Without me, you wouldn't have this location. Not because it was hilarious, but because I laughed due of its delusions. He was attempting to instruct me to remove my video, that I ought to create a fresh one in which I thanked him for making fun of me. In front of hundreds of people, you called me a loser. He continued by saying that the family felt awkward and embarrassed by all of this public drama, and that I needed to make things right, as if I had broken some holy law. I thus corrected it. That evening, I posted a lengthy new video that had more than just me speaking. This one had voicemails, screenshots, transcripts, and clips from the Facebook post and group chat. It also included a collection of the smug texts, laughs, and abuse, all of which were nicely displayed with identities masked just enough to raise questions without totally hiding them. Then I took an unexpected action. I pulled out a folder I had stored for years. Images, texts, and recordings of growing up in this house as well as the automobile. The occasions when my father made fun of me in front of instructors, friends, and relatives. He heckled my name when he arrived at my graduation intoxicated. He once said that I was too sensitive for my college girlfriend. Everything was there, layered and unsightly. I didn't share a heartbreaking tale. I just placed everything down so that others might see the pattern. I concluded it with this. I'm not pleading for pity. I'm not requesting that it be canceled. I would like to correct the record. I'm not a failure. I don't feel embarrassed about my origins. However, while I'm still crafting my tale, I won't allow anyone, family or not, to change it. Compared to the previous video, this one hit harder. I had more assistance from the local garage community this time. It was shared by mechanics nationwide. After that, therapists and a charity organization that supports adult children from abusive households shared it, including a link to my store. Things really took off at that point. I received 3 sponsorship proposals the next day. I was asked to be a guest speaker on a podcast. For a year, an auto parts manufacturer volunteered to supply my shop. Orders for branded goods arrived. As if it were a trend, people were actually sporting free labor auto sweatshirts. And my family went crazy. After switching sides, the cousins began squabbling over the group chat. Some people stood up for me. Others went all out, accusing me of being an attention seeker and betraying the blood. One even sent me an old picture of us as children and said, "You're really gonna throw all this away?" in an attempt to kill me. The craziest part, though, my dad was in the hospital, according to a message my mom gave me. A panic attack. An actual one. I initially believed it to be a heart attack. She concluded her speech by saying, "Are you content now?" I read it 3 times. After that, I switched off my phone. I didn't run to the hospital as my mother undoubtedly thought I would since I wasn't finished. The message sat with me. "Are you content now?" And give it time to soak in. It was absolutely true. She made it about me as if I had put it there, as if my quiet had suddenly triggered his panic attack. Not from the falsehoods or the years of manipulation or my life, which he turned into a circus. Nevertheless, I had a desire to know whether he was indeed present. I decided not to visit and traveled over 2 days later, only to observe. I waited in my parking space across the street from the side door of the hospital. It took very little time. He wasn't wearing a hospital gown while he was there, not connected to anything, just using a wheelchair as a prop while sitting in it. With his phone in one hand and a cigarette in the other, he was sporting his typical windbreaker. Beside him, my mother was pacing as if she would rather be somewhere else. As though awaiting a signal, she continued to stare at him. He had a nice appearance. Nor weak, nor afraid, just irritated. He gave her the cigarette at last and began browsing through his phone as if he were checking his email. It was similar to seeing a performer pause between parts. I watched from inside the car until they got back in. I then located a nurse by the elevator after entering from the side entrance. I introduced myself as his nephew. She made no inquiries at all. He wasn't receiving cardiac treatment, she claimed. He had came in mostly because he didn't feel like staying at home after being released due to some anxiety-related symptoms. I learned everything from that. Without a word, I walked away. He called that evening. I took it up. He began to speak as though nothing had occurred. No apologies, no reference to Facebook, the group conversation, or the videos. Let's go right to the point. Claimed to have viewed my video, the one in which I explained everything. Told me he appreciated the hustle and that it was nicely done. Then he said something that caused me to tighten my hold on the phone. Now you're establishing yourself, me and you. This might lead to something. A name, redemptive arc between a father and son. People are fascinated by that. I remained silent. He continued. He claimed to have been approached by a local news station. I was the subject of a feel-good feature on Channel 4, said that he spoke with them and expressed his pride, portrayed the misguided parent who only wished to make atonement for his transgressions. Then he stated this: "They want to film us both. I believe that doing it jointly would be beneficial. I emailed them some old photos previously, from the celebration of your 10th birthday. Believed it would make a compelling narrative. I questioned him directly about why he believed I would accept it. He made no hesitation at all. Therefore, you're not a moron. Exposure is what this is. You want your company to expand, don't you? Do you want your name to be known? This is the way then. Participate. Conduct the interviews. Go with the flow. People adore stories of comebacks." It dawned on me then that he had learnt nothing. Neither his actions nor my words mattered to him. He simply noticed the attention, the interviews, the appearances. I realized then that it wasn't over. It worsened the following morning. While I was rotating tires at the shop, my phone began to buzz. A few missed calls from folks I hadn't spoken to in months are mentioned in the notifications. I opened Instagram. He made an account at Real Free Labor, and his first post was a selfie video of him using one of my old wrenches as a prop while driving his truck. "My son thinks I'm the bad guy, but every story needs one," the caption said. "Let's have a conversation." In the film, he discussed how he pushed me hard because he thought I was capable, how I was always sensitive yet gifted, and how parents may make mistakes while they are delivering their lessons. However, love is the goal. He expressed sorry for his words, but he did not address the reason for the disarray in the statements. Half for his supporters, he was being torn apart by the others, and he answered both, as if it were his full-time occupation. He remained calm. He was turning around. For a long time, I just stared at the screen because I was recording every call, every voicemail, every manipulation, every phony offer of assistance, and every plot to use my story for ratings while he was gaslighting and spinning his little social media story. I had hours of incriminating, clear, and sharp audio that I wasn't keeping for legal purposes. I put it aside for another use. For a whole week, I didn't reply to anything he posted. I gave him free rein, give him the part, more TikToks and more vids. In one, he stood in front of his garage and said, "This is where my boy got his first wrench," as if it were his shop. Another displayed old pictures of me as a child, with dramatic music overlaid. The caption, "I brought him up hard. The world made him tough, even though he may now despise me." All I did was get him ready. The remarks were abhorrent. People told him that I was the one who was ungrateful, and that he was a wonderful father and a misunderstood old-school hero. "I wish my dad was like you," one woman wrote. It was more than just eerie. Since my name appeared in every film, my business, my face, my life, and my customers were beginning to become confused. It was becoming hazardous. A man entered and inquired about the presence of the TikTok dad for pictures. If the entire father-son tale was accurate, another woman stated she would want to schedule an appointment. While I did the actual labor, he made money off of the suffering and made it into a brand. I contacted him to let him know that I had been considering it. Perhaps we ought to speak. Perhaps Channel 4 was the best course of action. In a matter of minutes, he responded. He stated in all capitals that he would bring notes and suggestions for content to the session, referred to me as a champion, advised him to come by himself. Just the two of us, early Saturday. Not on the record. As usual, he arrived 15 minutes early on Saturday morning, dressed more elegantly than usual for the polo, tucked in as the shirt, whiter teeth than I had recalled. He appeared prepared for a photo shoot, entered the store as if nothing had occurred. "Look at this place," he said. "My son is doing a great job." I didn't respond, just indicated the chair across from my workstation. It was covered in a folder. He took a seat and opened it. Go over the contract. It was sanitized, lawful, drafted by a buddy of mine who was a lawyer and owed me a favor. According to the agreements, he is no longer permitted to utilize my name, face, company, or narrative in any interviews or personal branding materials. He had to be invited before he could enter my business again. There are no exceptions. He laughed when he reached the final sentence. "Are you really going to try to exclude your own father from the most important event in your life?" he said. I remained silent. I just gestured toward the Bluetooth speaker, that was located on the shelf behind me. The flashing red light was on. He examined it. Then he turned to face me. "Are you taping this?" I informed him that I was filming everything. Every phone call, every voicemail, every phony apology, and every secret scheme he came up with. I claimed to have them on cloud storage, ready to be dropped with witnesses, context, and timestamps. He began to lose his temper. "I was worried that I was becoming a true tiny snake," he remarked. Then he muttered something that caused me to reach for the table's edge. "Do you believe you're defending yourself? Do you believe that your foolish store will be the end of this?" The fourth channel is already in. Yesterday, I had an extensive interview with them. I told them how you interrupted me, how psychologically unstable you are. I'm very concerned about you. I gazed at him. He grinned. "Do you believe I have no idea how this game operates? The first person to weep wins." Then Jenna entered the rear office through the open door. Not only Jenna, Marcus, an old buddy, was behind her. Jenna stated, "The guy who helped me file my LLC held his phone and live streamed the entire thing." Marcus said, "We've been listening since the beginning. Frank, you're done." My father's eyes became still. For the first time, he appeared to be genuinely attempting to determine whether he could spin this. The texts were from Jenna. For weeks, she had been emailing him, first posing as someone who supported him, giving him lines, and urging him to speak. She even persuaded him to acknowledge that the medical visit was a ruse. In a voicemail, he informed her that he needed a respite from the vitriol and believed that showing some empathy would boost his fan base. We had Marcus, dates, text, audio, and video. He broadcast it live to more than 12,000 viewers. The real story behind Free Labor Auto exposing the TikTok dad is the title he gave it. My father got up, looking pale. He began to yell that we were setting him up and that this was a setup, that we would never be forgiven by the family. Muttering something about litigation, he hurried out the door. However, we were well aware that there would be no father-son channel, no redemption story, and no trial. He had created an idealized self-image on the internet, and now the reality was out, unvarnished and irrevocable. I wasn't finished, though, because Channel 4 was still working on that item. And after he left the store, slamming the door like a kid who has been denied sweets, I had one final call to make. I stood silently for a long time. Marcus and Jenna both remained silent. No celebration, no high fives. There was no sense of victory. Cleaning up something bad that has been there for too long was the feeling. Jenna lingered and assisted me in going through the files to ensure that everything was securely preserved. She stated that she was tired of acting as though the group chat hadn't been poisonous for years, but she didn't elaborate on the family. She mentioned that before she departed, "Before they say thank you, they will turn against you." She was not mistaken. By Monday, my father's sister and I had already received a telegram accusing me of defaming the family name, that I had just made things more difficult for everyone, regardless of what I believed I had disclosed. My cousin Nathan then sent me another, saying I had gone too far. All of a sudden, the same folks who made fun of me for fixing a car were now Channel 4 and forgiveness gurus. They made a call. I was about to switch off the phone when I took it up, but the producer caught me off guard. "They have seen the creek," she said. They were ditching it after seeing the TikToks. Not a section, so they changed course. Rather, they were going to take action about small company owners who, in order to survive, had to sever relations with harmful family members. A description of myself, my tale, my company. No father, no salvation, just the facts. I promised to give it some thought. I then checked my phone. I received more than 30 voicemails, missed calls, and texts from unknown numbers. Strangers, family members, and even a local pastor who claimed to have prayed about it and believed that reconciliation was the best course of action for Christians. So I made a final move. I told the man behind the counter to remove all of the contacts from the previous SIM card. Once I went to the closest phone store and purchased a new SIM card and number, did not support anything. My phone was empty when I left. No names, no noises, no notifications. Once more, just mine. Later that evening, I snapped a photo of the store's exterior with the newly installed sign. Sleek, bold, and free labor vehicle. I uploaded it with a single disrespectful sentence, "Running on tranquility." Asterisk. Asterisk. I disabled comments. The previous group chat has been blocked. Blocked. My father made no announcements. Not a big farewell speech. Simply gone. And it seemed like the cacophony had finally silenced for the first time in my life. No more mending the damage they caused. The work and I are alone now,